Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Stu Mackenzie of Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. We did this interview back in January of 2021, and you can also see the full version of this on the Songwriters on Process YouTube channel, so check it out. Stu is in Australia, obviously, when we did this, and I wanted to interview him because I'm a big fan of the music, but also because I don't know that any band puts out this many albums. They put out 5 albums alone in 2017. And I'm reminded actually that as I'm saying this, the band just announced a new album with an 18-minute song on it. I have not listened to it yet, but they have put out, at least as of last year, 16 albums over the course of 10 years. So when I heard that, I thought I have to listen to how Stu Mackenzie creates. Surely he is always creating. And as he told me, he said, I feel truly, truly filled with dread if I can't create something. So as you can imagine, he spends all day thinking about songs, and he gets anxious when he's not creating something, anything. Not even a newborn stopped Stu. And I think when we talked, he had just had a baby. It was not too long, I think. I forgot how old the baby is, but still creating all the time. And he said, I don't love stopping. It's hard to stop, but I also realize it's a problem I have. When I go on holiday and decide not to write, I'll do something like 500 Sudokus, he told me, or however that's pronounced. I have to be filling my brain with something. Good example of that, one of their songs came from the time signature of a car alarm. So I just imagine wherever he goes, whatever he sees or hears, he's always thinking about how he can turn that into a song. And as you'll hear, I mean, it's not surprising, but he is always creating. I mean, as I said, 5 albums in 2017. This was a super interview. I just thought he was so great to listen to, and it was not disappointing at all. So anyway, again, this is a year old. If you want to watch the video version of this, it's on the Songwriters on Process YouTube channel. And with that, here is Stu Mackenzie of Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I've been doing a lot of these video interviews since March, and at least in the US, it's been very difficult for songwriters for the most part, I found. I think people had this idea that all this isolation was going to make for this incredibly productive time. People are going to be writing all the time and it's going to be great, but I found that it's been a lot more difficult for people to write. Now, I know our situation here is much worse than you guys have had it as far as the pandemic, but I guess in general, has this been a better time or a worse time for you in general, I guess, as far as productivity, or has it had any effect on it at all?
It's definitely changed the way that I've approached creativity and songwriting and stuff. I think, gosh, there's a lot to unpack in that question. I think, firstly, here in Melbourne, we did have, even though we don't have a lot of, disease at the moment and stuff, we did have a fairly draconian lockdown for quite a while. So we didn't see. That was. My sense of time, again, is so insanely warped.
Was it like August? Because I was looking at the numbers.
Yeah. Yep.
It was, okay.
Yeah, it must have been around then. We had an earlier lockdown earlier in the year as well, but that was kind of when it went full tilt. We, as a band, we had to learn how to make music again without being in the same room, which is a common story, I'm sure, with a lot of songwriters that you're dealing with and talking with and stuff during this time. We are the kind of band that does feed off each other's energy, and we jam a lot and we do improvise a lot. And it was a challenge to figure out how to create that spark over a computer screen or over email or whatever. And I think ultimately it was amazing and great. And it forced us to kind of like approach songwriting from a different angle, which in a sense I feel grateful for. And also, you know, this time has definitely taught myself and many other people to feel insanely grateful for the things that you do have.
Yeah.
I think in terms of like unpacking your question and thinking, have I been more or less productive? I think I've been similarly productive. It's just that it took a while to settle into the new process.
I guess how about from the emotional weight perspective? I mean, I again, like songwriters here have talked about how for the first month they were writing all the time and then they had nothing because I guess and of course we're dealing with the political situation here. So it's also, you know, that also weighed on a lot of people, but I guess emotionally, and I guess maybe in general, I guess, is it difficult? And I keep going back to this idea that Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the plague, you know, and this idea, I guess, does emotional weight, the heaviness of emotional weight, make it more difficult for you to create?
I like the emotional weight. I think I place that upon myself a lot on purpose, to be honest. And I think there are kind of like some heavy themes throughout the last handful of our records, that do carry emotional weight on purpose. I think you can spot the artists who run from emotional weight from a mile away by what they choose to base their subject matter on. And I think we've tried hard not to do that. But I think it's an inner self-flagellating, like, you know, thing or something.
Right.
That to choose the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But it's true. There's extra emotional weight, like on us this year as a species. You know.
Yeah. But that doesn't interfere. I guess you find you tend to thrive on that. Then I guess that makes for you're thinking those are 50 more songs I can write because of. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is for some people there's a block, right? It gets to be difficult, and then, but for you it sounds like you thrive on that kind of stuff in a good way.
It doesn't change how like anxious or highly strung I feel about, you know, my world, but I think it does help with the sparks flying of, you know, ideas or inspiration. It also personally makes me want to sit on a guitar or on my laptop or do that sort of introverted escapism thing that songwriting can be for many people.
Okay. And I guess my next question related to that is, do you write well under deadlines or big expanses of time? Some people thrive, you know, if I said this has to be done in 24 hours, you thrive on that, or you go, oh man, like what is there a better position you write from in that sense?
Deadlines 100% for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's because, I like I'll do everything last minute anyway. So, you know, what's the difference? But also I like the late nights, and I like the kind of intense, like tired feeling that you get when your brain is starting to die, but you start doing weird stuff. I like writing late, or I like staying up trying to finish something all night, you know, to make a morning mastering session or something. Like I find I just feel energized by that.
Energized by the fatigue.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the fatigue or it's the adrenaline or the I think it's the adrenaline. I think I get adrenaline because it's just so stupid, you know.
So now that you have a baby, your time is no longer yours. And I found, and you know, as a writer myself, I find that having kids has made me more disciplined as a writer because, you know, you have only pockets of time when you can write. So do you find, I guess, that having a child, I mean, it's only been a month, has made you more disciplined as a writer in general?
Not yet.
Oh, really?
Well, I haven't written much, you know, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I've been, I haven't done that sort of hard writing yet. Like I haven't done that hard. What's the right way to describe it. When I'm truly in a writing sphere, pen to paper, or I would say like fingers on a laptop or fingers on a guitar with a microphone or whatever. I haven't done that at all yet, but I have been thinking a lot. And when you have a baby, as you would know, it's intense and crazy, but you also weirdly have downtime. It's sort of strange. Like you have thinking time, but you don't have any time for yourself. So I guess I've been thinking a lot about stuff, but I haven't put pen to paper. So,
but that's part of the yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, how I can answer yet? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Right. Don't worry, it'll happen. So, but when I was a professor, I told my students like your writing process is always taking place. I mean, the anxiety with writing tends to be, oh, I'm not writing. And so, but I tell them like your writing process is taking place while you're thinking, while you're eating, while you're moving, doing anything like that. And that's got to be some comfort, right? Even though you're not writing, you at least know that you are writing, kind of, right?
Right. I would agree with that for sure. Like, I don't think that's something that I've actively thought about, but I think that's wholeheartedly true.
For me, it's comforting just because I know that even if I'm in a rut and the words aren't going on paper, I know that something's going on in there. And at least for me, I find that, when I feel like I'm blocked or why can't I write these things, I just can't just sit down and do it. I know that something's going on in there I'm not aware of, but there's going to be a breakthrough eventually. So let's talk about that ritual because I'm fascinated by the art, the flat out, the creation part of it. And I'm fascinated by writers' rituals. So you've already talked about, time of day, but what other things are there things that you need to have with you or a place where where you live, where you tend to get your best writing done? Like how important is that ritual aspect to it for you?
I would love to say that I have one, but I really don't think that I do. I think the process and the ritual and the whole kind of, I mean, I guess people talk about the creative process, but I mean, like truly the creative process does change for me and I like it to change on purpose. Sometimes I'll write lyrics first, or sometimes I write music first. I like to change that, or sometimes I will make music exclusively on my laptop, or sometimes I'll write with the drum kit first, or sometimes I'll do this or that. But I think in terms of my ritual, I don't have one. I don't have one. The only thing that I've become increasingly needy for is my computer, like at all times, like oh, really? I think I would find it harder than I used to write, say, like a song on acoustic guitar that I could sing and sit down and play. I think in my earlier years, I would have been able to do that more easily. I think I would find it hard to do that. I'm like a little kid with an iPad, you know what I mean? Like I can't like escape technology anymore. So I think as long as I've got a computer, I can create. I don't know. That sounds weird now that I like say that out loud, but I think that's the only thing that I can think of as part of my ritual, because I use it. It's like everything. It's like I log what I'm doing. I write my notes. I do all my written word on my screen. I put things in a timeline. I write lists of everything I'm doing. I write lists of songs, or where things fit, or in an album, or this idea will connect to this one. It's all on my screen. I sort of do need it, I think.
So I'm
saying that out loud. I've got to break that. I got to get out of that.
But why? I mean, I guess why do you think you need to?
Because I think if I got out of that, I would create something different. So I should try. But I'm going around in circles now. But it's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. So do you intentionally like stay away from the acoustic guitar? I mean, is it to start? I mean, is that what you're telling me, or do you not?
No, it would be, for example, with say an acoustic guitar, which I do still write a lot on.
Yeah.
Like, I can sit on my couch or something and write with an acoustic and come up with some ideas or melodies or something. But it won't be long before I'm sitting with my acoustic in front of my screen again with a microphone
right.
Right in front of me, that I'm actually like sketching out ideas. Yeah, I think it's like my pencil, right?
Yeah.
It's my pencil, but it's also my like magnetic tape, and it's also my everything. It's all there.
When I decided to, I thought it'd be a cool thing to interview you. I was just amazed by the output, like how you write so much. Is there ever a time when you are deliberately not writing? Like you feel like artists tell me there are times when they don't create because that's the time to, they say fill the well. So I'm amazed by how prolific you are as far as the song output. So there are times when you deliberately say, yes, I'm not going to create now just to give myself a break or a rest, or, to let the ideas come to me.
I think I've got that, I have that OCD streak where I feel like truly, truly welled with dread if I can't make something. And it's like a problem that I have. I don't love stopping. I'm gonna have to nut that problem out eventually too. But I don't love stopping. I find it hard to feel that kind of like part of my brain. I'll feel the most sort of just like anxiety if
Really?
I'm not being constructive. I have to do something, like, I don't know, I'd end up the times where I have stopped writing, like I've gone on holiday or something and I've just thought I need to just like stop, this is intense. I'll end up doing something like real bizarre, like I'll do like 500 Sudokus or something,
Really?
Yeah, like I have to feel this like sort of thing in my brain. It's like a thing. It's like a sound. It's like a noise.
Yeah.
I feel most calm when I'm like got my hands busy.
I was dying to ask you that question because I was fascinated by that. Like we just don't see people put out multiple albums in a year anymore. And so do you just have, I guess, do you have just loads of discarded ideas? Like, do you work on things, set it aside, mix and match? Like I'm imagining you must have just tons of ideas that you have that are just on the shelf somewhere, right?
I think all creative people do, or in any, I'm sure writers do. I'm sure, painters do. I'm sure anyone in that world has tons of discarded ideas. I think, I have stacks, but I think I've learned to catalog them a little bit better and come back to them, because I now know when it's worth it to spend time on something. I think because I've just gotten a little bit more confident in my own, in writing my songs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know what I like and I know what I'm trying to do a little bit more, and I still throw ideas away, but I'll always keep them and they'll always be there, and I often will come back to them. I mean, there's still heaps of ideas that I'll probably never come back to, but I won't bother cataloging anything unless there's something in it that I like, or there's something in it that I felt was like interesting enough to write down or to record or something. So yeah, those ideas are often kind of coming back, and sometimes it's several years.
Yeah, it
and
is.
then that's really normal for me. There's a lot of songs in the King Giz discography that were originally written many, many years before they were finished.
So do you go back to those ideas? Like if you're in a rut, you're thinking, I need something to kind of energize me, spark. Do you go back to those ideas?
No, it's more like the thing that King Giz does that I'm not sure a lot of other artists do. Well, I haven't heard many other bands talk about music like this or writing like this. We write we write albums rather than songs. So, we're working on songs and stuff, and the song is like a constituent part of the whole, but we're always thinking about what the album is and what the album's personality is and what it sounds like. And often three or four songs will feel like they're brothers and sisters, and they belong together, and they're family, and they live in the same album. And it will be obvious, and I will think, oh, there's this other idea that I wrote like 5 years ago that is part of this family and it needs to be adopted, right? And so you go back to this idea and you flesh it out, and there was some reason that at the time you felt that it was shit, or it wasn't good, or it wasn't fleshed out enough, and now maybe you have the tools in your toolbox to be able to kind of like put that one together and add it to the family.
I've heard a lot of songwriters talk about the role of motion in their process. Songwriters get a lot of ideas when they're walking, hiking, biking, stuff like that. I've heard swimming is a great, for whatever reason, something about, I interviewed Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam a couple of months ago, and he told me he has this whole theory about bipedal movement, how cadence and rhythm in the limb movement stimulates he does that, and he gets a lot of song ideas that way. So does that happen to you ever, kind of when you're out moving, like that role of movement? Does that ever stimulate beats or melodies, song ideas, or maybe even things that you hear in the environment?
I like that idea. I think it probably has without me realizing. I think, yeah, I like that. I'm gonna think about that. That's a good one. I like walking, or I've recently started to like running, which is maybe something that is, it's fresh for me. But I think for me, well, look, maybe there is a motion thing involved that I hadn't put my finger on, but to me, it was the switch off thing. And I think it's why people have ideas in the shower as well, is because
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's a real thing for me, because you sort of have to switch off. And like, I'll often like put a podcast on in the shower or something, or because I want the noise to continue. It's like this kind of like addiction to like not stopping. Yeah. And that's cool. I like doing that. I'll often listen to like news or something in the morning, have shower or whatever. But if I'm in a writing phase, or I'm trying to finish something, or I'm thinking about a song, I have to force myself to not do that. And if I go for a run, I find it very hard to not listen to music, because it's just too much going on in my head. But if I'm writing, I like to force myself to not listen to anything and just run and just think. Because I think that's a real thing. I think but for me, it's just getting rid of distractions. If you're showering, you're thinking about something very basic. If you're running, you're thinking about something very basic, and you allow your mind to just be a little bit more free, I think.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there with that whole idea. I mean, I've heard shower a lot, because what else are you doing? You're washing your body so that you can't focus on anything else. But I've heard some people say even the rhythm, like the water, the sounds of the water. In fact, I interviewed the guys in the Black Pumas, and they were just nominated for a couple of Grammys. Yeah, and the one guy told me that he gets beat ideas all the time from listening to the turn signal on his car. So he'll be stopped, and he'd stop. And the turn signal, he said he's always trying to put like a 6/4 rhythm on the turn signal or something. And his wife has to tell him, you got a green light, you got to go. And he's always, and I've had songwriters tell me that they've gotten melody beat ideas, and when they cross bridges, and the sounds of the tires going over things on the bridges, that repetitive, so many really cool ideas where those songs come from.
I have one of those ones as well, actually. When growing up, I listened to a lot of, like prog rock type stuff, and lots of weird time signature music and everything like that. But when I really started to learn how to play and jam with other people, it was just not something that we ever did, or I ever did with any of my earlier bands, or even with the King Giz early sort of iterations and stuff. It was just never something that we were interested in. But I think it was locked down in my brain, like rhythmically sort of more unusual beats than just the straight up stuff. But but it was when we were recording our what was our third record, Float Along Fill Your Lungs, and we were out in the country at this barn which belonged to our friends Stonefield, who are a great Australian band. Anyway, we were at their farm, we were recording out there, and I pulled up in my car to the barn, and I left my lights on in my car. And my car used to make this old Ford that I had at the time used to make this alarm type sound when you left your lights on. It was like, hey, come turn your lights off. But it was in 5/4. The alarm itself was in 5/4. It was like da 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 da, and it was on for like hours or something, and I think it crept into my brain. And it wasn't until a few days later that I realized that the song I wrote has the exact same rhythm as the car alarm. And it was the first song that we wrote that was in not 4/4 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it fucking blew my mind when I made this like connection. I think it was the next time that I accidentally left my lights on and the alarm was going off. And I just thought, holy shit, that's that song that we wrote like a few days ago.
Wow. That's really cool. That's a great story. Yeah, I think if you think about it, a lot of those things are happening because those sounds, you may not realize it at the time. And I had a songwriter tell me he wrote an entire album. He wrote one of the albums in the woods, and he was hiking, and he realized that he was the songs he wrote matched the rhythm and the cadence of the hike he went on that day. That the song, and so all that stuff kind of, I think it's related. But yeah, there was some artist, some cartoonist wrote an article about 10 years ago about how boredom is a necessary component of the creative process. So I think that's kind of tuned into that too. I mean, that when you're exercising or showering, there's not much else to do. So you're creating every day. I mean, there's never a day when you're not creating. I'm so fascinated by your output. How many hours, like, what do you estimate? What's the longest stretch you've gone without some kind of creative output?
I think I'm definitely not putting pen to paper every day. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you're not? Okay.
But I'm thinking about stuff every day, I think.
Yeah.
Because I can't know it because I'm like a bit obsessed and stuff. I think it's varied. It just depends what I'm working on as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm usually in one of two modes. I think one mode is the kind of true creative mode where you're really just like fishing. You're really just like you're trying to be open-minded, and every idea that comes is like I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I love that process, but it's before an album takes shape, or it's before I know what I'm doing really. And I think in that process, I spend way, way more time procrastinating and like trying to figure out what I'm doing and like looking around and like, I don't know, reading or things that are sort of not necessarily related to what I'm doing, but like maybe at the end of the day is part of the arrow that you need to like traverse to get to the end.
Yeah.
I think in those instances, like I might spend half my day really feeling like I'm actually working, and the other half of my day I'm like, just confused. And then I think when I'm finishing something, I'm much more focused. Like when I'm finishing something, or when an album is half done or 2/3 done or whatever, I'd really knuckle down and I could like, I feel like I could spend an endless amount of time in the hole. Like I feel like I would probably just like fall asleep on my laptop screen unless like someone made me like get off it or something.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a different headspace, and I like to flip between both because I think they're both tiring. You know, they're both tiring to be in for too long. So I think it's part of the reason we've released a lot of things because, I like to flip. So like I like to work really, really hard on something, finish it, really, really finish it, really wrap it up and move on, and then go back into that kind of more open-minded headspace.
Yeah, so it's kind of fluid, right? I mean, I guess it sounds like that process is pretty fluid for you.
It's super fluid, and usually we have like at least 3 or 4 projects on at any one time. So, you know, like people think, oh, we have released a lot of records and stuff. You guys must make records quick. Well, we kind of just work on lots of things at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think most records still take us 2 years to make.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's just that it's, you know, from kind of like inception to completion, I still think it's generally in the ballpark of 2 years.
Yeah.
It's just that like there's usually a few other things going on at the same time, and it's not 2 years of intense, constant focus.
Right. Do you do a lot of revising to your lyrics?
I think I do more than I used to.
Oh, really?
I think compared to a lot of writers, I don't do a lot. I think compared to other people that I've spoken to, which, yeah, I'm not sure what that says about me, but I do more than I used to.
What are you revising? Like switching a word out, or that sound doesn't fit? Like what kind of revising are you doing?
I think in the past, I used to mostly write music first, and I'd get music to like a fairly completed place before I even really picked up lyrics, or maybe I had a title, or maybe I had a verse or a chorus, but very rarely a full song. So anyway, the words would always come last, and it would always come close to the time when I felt like I had to record it and lock it in and lay it down. And then there's no time to revise, you know, like you don't have any time to revise. It's just locked in. Whereas I think now I try to write my lyrics as early as possible. And often they're way before the music is finished, which almost always before the music is finished. So I think I just have more time with them. I spend more time with the lyrics. And I think that's just because it helps me to write better. I feel a little bit less like a natural when it comes to the written word. I feel like I have to work a bit harder with that. I think I've spent a lot more hours thinking about music than I have thinking about the English language, you know. I think I have to work a little bit harder at it. I still love it. But I need to allow myself that safety net, or that opportunity to say at the 11th hour, I'm rewriting everything, or I'm starting again on this song, or I'm rewriting the whole thing, or I'm rewriting this verse, or I just realized I don't like it. You know what I mean? I need to allow myself that net.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like that would almost cause me more anxiety. Like, I don't know. I can almost see value in waiting till the last minute because, hey, I'm out of time. I have no choice. But I feel like there's almost be more anxiety and, oh, I've got all this time to change it up and think about it.
The thing is, I don't though. You know, like I don't just sit there revising my lyrics. I don't do that. I'd be much more likely to do that with the music. It's more that like I might write the words a year before it's recorded or something sometimes, and I might look at it like 4 times.
Okay.
You know, in that time, and it would be like with a fresh perspective, I would open it up and reread it and just think that doesn't make sense. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? And then I'm like revising. It's more like that. It's not just like I don't wake up every single morning and look at the lyrics that I wrote the day before and just think I'm a failure. You know,
right.
It's not like
well, distance is great. I mean, unfortunately for me, like you were saying, like when I look at things I wrote in the past, I rarely look at it and go, oh my God, that's great. It's always, what was I thinking? Right. I mean, but distance is all, I mean, that fresh perspective is crucial. I tell that people all the time, like, you know, the more distance you have something that you wrote, just that fresh perspective lets you see things that you didn't see before. Speaking of words, then last question. I find that songwriters are voracious readers. You know, how much reading do you get to do? Who do you like to read? And what impact does that have on your songwriting?
I think for the last, this is actually a question I had I've had this question a couple of times lately, and it's made me feel a bit sad because I've realized that I read less than I used to. And I think it's because I need to think about this for a second. I think I'm less interested in the escapism of reading, and I think in terms of like finding, in terms of finding inspiration from like fantasy, like I used to much more.
Yeah.
I think I'm finding the real world incredibly inspiring in its fucked upness. And I think I'm spending a lot more time just like, I don't know, like reading news or like reading like news and current affairs or like science and stuff at the moment. I think in terms of anything that relates to Giz, I think has a lot more relevance in the past 3 or 4 or three maybe 4 years of output.
Yeah.
Which it's a newer thing for me to say. I think in the past I used to read a lot of science fiction and fantasy and stuff, like the things that you would think that I would read based on like the kind of
right, not a shocker, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Does that make you sad? I mean, are you thinking like, I wish I was reading more?
It makes me sad in a way that I find hard to articulate why, because I feel full. Like I feel like I don't need to read as much as I used to. Like I used to feel like the need to just escape into a book and soak it up and feel mega inspired by that, whether it was the words on the page or just like the thought that someone had put so much effort into this book, I better put some effort into what I'm creating. Mm-hmm. I don't feel the need to do that as much. I just think there's a lot. I've barely read nonfiction in my life. It's something that I've not been interested in for some reason. I've read a handful of biographies and stuff, but I just like fantasy. I've always liked fantasy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I got a kind of strange relationship to books right now.
Who are your go-to, like when you were reading, who are your go-to authors that you would always go back to?
Like classic science fiction. Like I loved the Dune series, of Frank Herbert series, and Ursula Le Guin and stuff like that. Or I don't know, like classic sci-fi. I'm an absolute dork for, and I should get back into it. I think it would make Gizzard different if I did. Like, you know, I used to spend a lot of hours reading, or at least, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours a day. It's a lot of your like mental brain space, and it does have massive influence on the way you think. I think if you read a decent amount every day, I think it does change the way you think. It's
Absolutely, it does.
Whoever that author is, like, really does put a stamp on your, because every author has a personality and a way of thinking, or maybe every book does. I think it changes your perception pretty massively, I think.
Yeah. So how would the band be different if you started reading an hour or two a day? What would that do?
It would depend on what I was reading, but I think if it was sort of, like the kind of that sort of era of fantasy again, I think it would be more escapist for sure.
Yeah.
Like I think Gizzard's just become like paranoid, alarmist, like a bit, like, you know what I mean? In the last handful of records, which is cool because it's like kind of how I really think, and I kind of think that more people think like that. Unfortunately, as annoying as it is, but yeah, we'd probably move a little bit away from that because it's sort of like a pain in the ass to think like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, songwriters have told me, I mean, how directly, like some of them are directly influenced by and songwriters tend to always bring up the same writers, like Kurt Vonnegut, you know, Charles Bukowski comes up, the ones that emphasize word economy. Like it seems like it's always the same ones that always come up with song. But science fiction, I mean, I've had, there's a metal hard rock band called The Sword, based out of Austin, Texas, and I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he talks about the science fiction writers and having a huge, and that's directly in the imagery in their songs too. So
I think there's something about the cadence of some writers as well that feels song-ish. and I think it's part of the reason so many people have been influenced by Tolkien is because there's a certain poetry in his writing that feels so, and there literally is like music, or not music, there literally is poetry in his writing as well, and literally songs and stuff. But I think that's real. I think Cormac McCarthy writes with a certain poetry.
I was going to say, I knew that was what I was missing. Cormac McCarthy always comes up. Always. Yeah.
Like if you read like Blood Meridian or something, it feels songish.
Yeah.
I think it's a cadence, and it's almost like the structure of how sentences flow feels songish. You can sing them, but not all writers are like that.
Yeah.
I'm having a mind blank. Who's the insanely famous American science fiction writer from the West Coast 60s? What's the guy called?
Who's come up? Philip K. Dick has come up a lot.
Philip K. Dick. I love Philip K. Dick, but I don't get the same like cadence. I wouldn't feel like I need to go and write a song after I read Philip K. Dick, but I might if I read Frank Herbert. And I think they were kind of from like that era, but I think that it's just different. It's different.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.